This episode of Wistoria couldn't get any better as the headless villain does villainy and asks for some head from our heroines, and Wignel finds his way to build some resolve and accepts being touched by another man. Come join me on my review of Wistoria Wand and Sword, episode 10, Our Dreams, as we recap and react to one of the best episodes that involves chasing a dream that we all have. Clapping elf cheeks! Elf Will, aka Wignel, has his own symbol in the tower, Alfie. Just like MC Rizzler Will has to reach Elfie at the top of the symbol. Two characters shunned by their own people. Two characters looking to get some Magia Vander booty. At the beginning of the Wistoria story, how a lot of regarded Magic Academy's best students have been portrayed made it seem like Miss Perfect and Wignel are the elites of the elites. However, everything changed the episode Roasty roasted our dear Colette Loire with his geekiness. I'm afraid the peak times for Colette might soon be coming up. The tide has turned when it comes to how we viewed Wignel. He naturally comes from a race of people that are blessed with talent in magic, the elves, along with his illusion ability that seemed top notch. But like Shion and Julius, Wignel has fallen to the realization they went through, and that Munosha-san is a total beast with lots of courage. We all know courage is a typical cliche shonen theme, so in Wistoria, depending on how you see it and receive it, courage is going to be a significant part of the story throughout and going to be heavily emphasized in different ways, in very obvious ways that you guys can probably all assume, but we'll get there when we get there. With Wignel not being as strong and his resolve starting to waver, that has unfortunately unlocked all of his insecurities and his backstory, which is shaping up to be just like Will Serfort's. In the previous episode, the two revelations about Wignel's character is that he is actually weak for an elf, thus shunned, and it looks like childhood Wignel and childhood Eleanor had a similar relationship like Will and Elfie. This episode's hook just reinforces the same motivations as our MC Rizzler Will, as Elf Will wants to prove to his dear Alfie that he too wants to clap those elf cheeks. After the opening credits, Wignel reveals that he too is an Elf Will, a laggard, an Ochikobore of a proud elf race. Like Lihana revealed in the prior episode, all the real talented people are already in the tower, and as an elf, he is the only elf left that hasn't been able to get closer to the symbol. Wignel's biggest problem is that his illusion magic doesn't actually take physical form like it's supposed to, like the other elves. Because of his inability that comes off like some weird disability, he gets laughed at by his own people. Look at Will. He's finding another bum just like him. He's about to get his first real friend that's a guy. Good for you, Will. Lihana's scene with Colette just furthers this notion that they are nobodies, because many students with real talent during their 6-year tenure at regarded Magical Academy already made it to the tower. So getting all those credits might not really mean that much to the true geniuses like Elfie. As Lihana brings up Albus Vina, Colette has a look on her face like she's never gonna be able to clap Will's cheeks now. We are in the meat of the character development for Lihana and Wignel, just reaffirming that in the grand scheme of things, they can't compare to the people already in the tower, the place they are hoping to reach in advance while they're there, to hopefully themselves become Magia Vanders. Lihana and Wignel are realizing that they are just average human beings, like the rest of us. Why am I so offended by that? Elf Will grew up with a young future elf queen Eleanor and totally put the riz on her to show her his high elf status. But unfortunately for Elf Will, there was only one person erecting giant wood, and it was Alfie. Not only was a young Eleanor bigger, stronger, and an even higher elf, that made poor Wignel just an Elf Will. Bro got left in the dust and dumped just like Will did. But guys that have been there before and got their dreams crushed by a girl better than them, that just motivated Elf Will to become, apparently, still just Elf Will. Wignel continued to work his way into overcoming his inabilities, and because of that, he basically tells Will that he is inept. Instead of Will hitting Wignel with the "Daijoubu," he hits him with something worse.
You're just like me.
Will hits Wignel with some shonen and some brotherly love, like "I got you, bro." And Colette continues to be Will's mouthpiece and a one-sided side piece to tell Liana that you're just like Will too. Meek, but just like Will. Even a Munosha like him can put his meek to sleep. As we are approaching midway through the episode, it's time for some epic music as all of our meek characters start building some resolve and are facing over 5 enemies. Will continues to surprise Elf Will with his lone sword and his relentless endurance. After Wignel coming off like a total ass in the previous episodes, he asks Will why he hasn't forsaken him. But Will is reminded of what Elfie said, "It's cause you're a nice guy." And so Will hits Wignel with the fact that Wignel himself is actually a nice guy. After some nice guy talk, who knew the dungeon on floor 11 identified as a woman because it started to give birth to some freaky ass monsters. These Balker monsters, worth 11 credits, are immune to physical attacks and are resistant to magic. What are they supposed to do to defeat them then? Love, care, compassion, parental authority. As convenient as it sounds, only illusion magic can defeat these fiery beasts. Wignel gets annoying with his character development and hits us with some moody, "You Munosha, find some goddamn resolve." This situation is a classic "I don't believe in myself, but I believe in you" situation. Braziller Will hits Elf Will with the fact they are Munoshas and that making mistakes is okay. It's a classic shonen lesson, and it's the fact that they are brothers from another unrevealed backstory. Everything will be daijoubu because Wignel and Will share the same dream of making it to the symbol so they can clap Amagia Vander's cheeks. But one has way more resolve right now than the other, and that other is the one that holds the keys with his illusions. Wignel finds his high elf and launches an attack after seeing how useless Will is against these monsters, but his spells doesn't have an effect. Then Kiki pulls a Colette and protects Will from some monster bullies. While Will and Kiki are holding a blast back from the monsters, Will hits Wignel one more time with some friendship. Like how Will confides in dwarves because of their parallel struggles, Wignel starts to feel touched. Wignel goes through all of his inner demons and starts to feel what another Munosha like him feels like. This is totally starting to get touchy as Wignel starts dropping some classic anime lines like he's had enough with his bullshit. With Alfie in mind as the symbol, Wignel ain't dying until he's clapping top tier cheeks. Wignel pulls a Gilgamesh and starts launching multiple spells at the dungeon's kids by laying the biggest wood he has ever laid down. Elf Will gets down on one knee to show his respect to the MC Braziller Will. However, Braziller Will has always respected Elf Will, and Wignel does something that he only lets someone like Liana and Eleanor do. Touch him! Braziller Will and Elf Will march forward as they use a bloody map and Werkner Sensei's pussycat to go find the others. Then we get some fire and ice action. What happens when two assholes unite? They become assholes to each other. When two characters are so much alike, expect some mirroring to play out. Shion shows how much he's caught up to Julius and the others and throws them to the side. With Julius relying on his search ability too much, Shion already learned this lesson as monsters on this level can simply bypass some simple search spells. Then Shion's worst nightmares bear fruition once again as he's reminded of the daijoubu incident as evil sentinels come out of nowhere. It's time for some exorcism of humiliating trauma. Julius starts to wonder about the number of powerful monsters coming out of nowhere being an abnormality, concluding that it's likely the work of that crazy monster that appeared on floor 10. Then Shion is ready for some exorcism of his trauma with the duel of fire and ice. Fire bosses the ice to make uncontrollable body doubles, and with the daijoubu on his mind, Shion is about to incinerate all these sentinel monsters. Then it transitions to all the NPC students all running away from all these evil sentinels, and we got ourselves some fodder for the monsters. But just as one was about to get stomped on, Edward Sensei, of all people, saves the day. And that might be the last time we see Edward Sensei do anything that important. Wignel Sensei and Edward Sensei continue to make the way to Liana's party, and now it's both these side pieces' turn to show the powers of Earth and Lightning. We get some girl-on-girl bonding time, showing support for each other, and in the end, Colette wants to be saved by Elfaria's future hubby. Like a well-executed, ominous, and mysterious transition like Colette is going to be actually saved by Will, it leaves a mystery in the wind as it looks like a person steps towards Colette and Liana, but before we figure out who that person is, Wignel and Will stumble across a bunch of dead sentinels, courtesy of the fire and ice assholes. And very quickly, it moved back to the scene with Liana and Colette. Unfortunately for them, two chicks meet two heads, and the headless villain that popped off Bruno Sensei's head. As it couldn't have gotten any creepier and more dire for their situation, the masked blonde-headed man named Marze comes out of nowhere to complain about their villainous plans not being fully executed. They expected that the Duke monster on level 10 was supposed to finish Liana's party before they were even able to reach floor 11. But here they are, two girls, two heads. Make that one head. The villains continue to be your typical villains and make illogical decisions like reveal their names and their motives. For some reason, they want to take down the fake sky that the Magia vendors are holding up to let whatever celestial entity outside of it to begin a calamity. So just as Colette starts to put the pieces together, the headless one asks for Liana and Colette to give it head. Just before this villain was going to forcibly take two girls' heads, the man of all the wifey's dreams comes in the clutch. Ain't nobody giving head while Will is around with his lone sword. At last, it's the moment we've all been waiting for. The main crew of 6 versus the two villains. And apparently it's not as Will goes flying. And the villains actually make the smart decision to accomplish what they were supposed to do. As the smart one pulls the headless one away to complete their villainous task, the headless one uses the Mage Queen's secret transportation magic to summon once again that monster that forced them the character develop separately from each other. It's the evil Grand Duke. And that's how the episode will end, with some and some Uso. This episode proved to be one that made Wistoria a more well-rounded cast of characters that have a little bit of depth to them and have them be a little bit more relatable. Although I found it kinda cheap that Wignel's backstory is so close and similar to Will's, the anime does such an incredible job at creating that crescendo for Wignel's character to find his resolve, to get over his inner demons, and make an exciting payoff with a touch. I've pretty much come to the conclusion that shonens like Wistoria, they need a strong main plot, because shonens, that's just how they shine the best. Because in these situations that they're in right now, fighting all these strong monsters and almost fighting the two main villains that we know about, this is the closest we've been the entire season of something valuable potentially being lost in a more realistic scenario of something valuable being lost. And the mysteries of the story, along with the mystery of the lore within the story, of the Magia vendors and whatever this celestial thing is, all the mysteries surrounding these villains, it brings up all these intriguing questions that we have about them and about the entire story. And we don't even know about Will's background. How did he become an orphan? How did Elfaria become an orphan? There's so much right here. A real intrigue and mystery is essential to the story. And I think right now we have tons of that within the Wistoria story. That's what makes a fascinating story, and that's why we love shonen, and that we keep coming back to similar kind of stories like a Wistoria. And I think this episode right here, it does a good job building for certain big moments and creating a balance of a lot of tension while introducing a lot of mysteries with the villains coming in. While unfortunately we don't get to see the villains actually fight them, we still get that special touchy moment with Wignel, and we do get that nice scare with the villain showing up where for a moment it was only Colette and Liana. It was truly an introductory kind of taste to how bad it could possibly be for them. If it wasn't for Wignel Sensei and Edward Sensei rushing to get where they're at, maybe the villains might have taken their time to possibly fight these 6 students, which looked like they didn't really have that big of a chance at all, as they sent Will flying like it was nothing. And from what I've read in the manga, I am all caught up with the manga. To me, I think story-wise, it's all actually uphill from here, and I'm super excited to stick with the story, stick with this anime. I think early on people are just like, it's a very typical anime, which it really is. It's very typical for a shonen, but you can be typical and still execute certain parts that make it exciting. And I think this episode is another good example, along with when Will fought Julius. That was a very, very well executed fight, as well as the MC fights a rival. Basically, these tropes never die, and they're tropes for a reason, because they work and they're fun. So the conclusion of episode 10 of Wistoria is establishing everything from all the main characters, so this party is 6, to the introduction of these villains, who obviously are a little bit more like grunts, as we don't know who the true pull stringers are just yet. While we do know what they want to do in stopping the Magia Vanders of holding up this fake sky, we don't know the truer motive behind why they want to do that. Why do they want to bring a calamity? So right now, the story is in the process of slowly revealing the lore, the truth behind the lore. So we're going straight into the biggest mysteries of Wistoria and how that links to our MC, to Elfaria. So overall, this was an incredibly exciting episode. I feel like at this point, the foundation of the story is here. So now we have a good idea of all the characters, and now we have the main characters facing real villains. It's going to be easier and easier to get into the story, to build upon the characters that we are now introduced with and know a little bit better. So yeah, guys, let me know what you guys thought about this episode of Wistoria, Wanted Sword, Our Dreams. And do me a favor, guys, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Check out my blog at otakusen.com, and I appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you guys on the next video.